There is no laughter.
Zero laughter.
Zilch laughter from both of them.
Maybe the spider monkey part.
Yeah, the spider monkey. Yeah.
Hold on, spider monkey.
What the hell? No one was laughing there. We were laughing as an audience, but they weren't laughing.
Hey everybody, welcome to Rom Com Vom, a Sex Ed with DB podcast miniseries exploring popular rom-coms from the 90s and early aughts that gave us toxic messages about love and sex. Welcome back, Sex Ed with DB listeners. I am so thrilled that you're here. This week we are joined by Reed and Florence, the multi-award-winning, gorgeous, and talented hosts of the Come Curious podcast, who know a thing or two about relationships and fantasy based on today's episode. And last week's teaser was this. This film stars a high school student who is always a bit of a misfit, who doesn't expect life to change much when she moves from sunny Arizona to gloomy Washington State. Then she meets a handsome but mysterious and impossibly fast and strong teen. She enters into a dangerous romance with him as her immortal soulmate. And of course, we're talking about Twilight today, okay? And before I even get into this with you guys, there is some internet discourse over whether or not Twilight is a rom-com or actually a rom fantasy dram. But let me tell you, after the rewatch I did for this episode, I laughed out loud more than any other rom-com that I have rewatched for this miniseries. So in my mind, it's a rom-com. We're going to dive right in with our first segment, which is as a teen. Usually the segment is as a kid, but I think all of us maybe were teens when we saw Twilight for the first time. And so I want to know from both of you, like, when did you first watch it? Team Edward, Team Jacob, or a secret third option? And how did it shape your ideas of relationships as teens? Like, let's get into it.
Wow, it's probably why I'm so fucked up today, honestly. I was like,
Wow.
I was diehard, so I read all of the books and religiously went to the cinema to see all of the films as well. And obviously I'm Team Edward, toxic as hell, unavailable, classic, immortal,
shiny, fast, hot.
God. Robert Pattinson,
oh my God.
I mean, it is Robert Pattinson, you can't deny. I am the other side of Twilight. So Twilight is not my type of book or film, but there's a lot of
the good counterbalance.
Yeah, it's like both Florence and I, two polar opposites. I didn't watch Twilight until I was maybe 26, 27. I was a lot older, and my boyfriend at the time was like, you haven't watched Twilight, you need to watch it. My boyfriend was like, you need to watch it.
How did you avoid it? How the fuck did you avoid it? That's what I don't understand.
Because I was a miserable, gothy fucking teenager that hated romance, and I only wanted to watch gay boys.
Ooh.
That is it. So it really didn't pander to what I wanted,
I know that Twilight is toxic as hell. I did not know this when I first watched it, though, and we were talking about watching it for the first time. I honestly was like, wow, I just remember thinking, wow, Edward is the perfect man. I want a relationship exactly like this one. I want to be a vampire, and I want him to be a vampire.
Yeah,
because I loved living in fantasy world, and vampires turned me on. I don't know what it was about vampires in particular. I think it's because they're fucking scary, and you're just so vulnerable, and there's a lot of there's a big power play dynamic.
Yes.
And obviously back then I didn't know that I was into BDSM or any of that kind of stuff. So maybe that was the intro into,
honestly, yes,
being super submissive, because Bella is she's
I'm sorry. Oh, the meekness she gives off, and just she's just fuffing all over the screen.
Yeah.
It's so interesting just to think. A lot of it. She's very out of breath all the time. It's just kind of it's just kind of funny to think about the fact that when we know for sure as sexual health educators that like these messages and the media that we consume as young people really do inform the way that we see our relationships and the desires we have. And you're talking about BDSM, we're talking about, you know, unhealthy boundaries. Like we're going to get into this, but I think like this movie is just such a perfect example of it was seen by millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people, I assume. And so like a lot of people have similar kinds of ideas here around this. Like everything has been done before, right? Like we're not very original. Like a lot of people are thinking the same things because we're all consuming the same shit. And so it's just this really interesting thing. And if you guys who are listening haven't seen it with fresh eyes, let me give you a little recap. So Twilight follows Bella Swan, a high school girl who falls for Edward Cullen, a literal 100-year-old, 17-year-old vampire. Their love story unfolds amidst a rivalry with Jacob, a werewolf, setting up the famous vampire versus werewolf love triangle. As much as Twilight defined a generation for millennials, right? Like, and for all the swooning that it still gets from Gen Z and all the memification of the whole thing, its portrayal of love is, let's just say, like questionable, right? Like between like the possessiveness, the stalking, Edward's casual, like, I could kill you, but I won't, like energy. Like it's just absolutely treacherous. So
he watches her while she sleeps.
And she's
he
like
breaks into her house and watches
in her window. Oh my God. He's like, for the past couple months. Sir,
and then
please.
the gaslighting that ensues, you know, like the constant gaslighting most of the film. No wonder we're accepting of it when it happens to us because we're like, oh yeah, I must be crazy. I've heard this narrative before.
The obsession here. I mean, my producer wrote a very funny line, so I have to read it. Let's sink our teeth in, pun intended, to this blood-sucking romance and figure out, you know, if Twilight really teaches us about love, obsession, and the difference between the two, or if it really melds. And so now we're getting into the intensity of this episode with a segment called That's Problematic. So we're breaking down the film's most problematic elements. We have like 3 kind of buckets that we're going to be talking through. The first one is possessiveness as romantic, like Edward's controlling behavior. Like Florence, Reed, like talk us through this. Like Florence, you love this movie. Tell us what you saw as a teen. Tell us what you saw as the rewatch. You said you might even rewatch it later today. You love this movie. So what's going on here? What's happening?
The thing is, it's so hard because I know how fucking toxic it is, and I like see now how fucked up it is. Especially, I don't know whether this is obviously a different thing, but I reread the book as an audiobook with my dad on the way up to Forks, Washington earlier this year, and
she's a diehard fan.
Is even worse. Like I was in an abusive relationship at the end of last year. Re-listening to the book, I was like, what? Like, he's doing exactly all of the things that my abusive ex did.
Ugh,
like the
mirroring.
The gaslighting, the control, like all the little like, I'm like, it's seriously fucked up. Like his character is seriously fucked up. It's way more fucked up in the book. It's not as fucked up in the film. He's still fucked up in the film
because it is quite bad in this film. Yeah, it is. I was the same. I rewatched this film, and I laughed so hard all the way through. And I watched it with my boyfriend Jacob, and we both laughed because he loves these movies. Right? He really wants to watch the rest of the series, and I was like, as I'm like coming at it completely. The film is okay, you know, like the way it's filmed is really cool, like the grading, it looks very pretty. The acting is questionable, but like that is part of it. This film is full of nostalgia, and I imagine if you grew up with this film, like you're loving it because of the nostalgia. But not only that, it is the stereotypical fantasy that most women and girls have. Like this idea of a very strong, possessive, beautiful man that all they want to do is pay attention to you because you are special. It's a pick-me movie. You're watching it because you're chosen, and you're not just chosen by anyone. You're chosen by the secret, the special, the one that nobody ever goes near, and now you're involved in this whole
the hottest guy in school.
Yeah, the hottest guy. Well, I mean, it's like hottest two guys, right? It's like setting up for more. It is wow.
Also, he and his siblings look 35. I don't understand. Like, when they walk in the cafeteria, I'm just like, I'm sorry, they're supposed to be 17-year-olds. Like, I don't, and they're also so weird, right? Like, we were talking about Mormon writing. Like, all of them are foster siblings, but all of them are fucking. You're just like, what is going on here?
They just casually put the incest under the radar, where it's like,
casually.
That's so weird that they're foster. It's like, oh, well, they're not by blood, but it's like, no, that is still fucking weird. Like, but it's hot, and it's feeding into that fantasy.
Right. And there's this whole idea, right, where like Bella, the way that Edward treats her, like the first hour of the movie, he literally like snarls at her because he smells her, and later we find out it's because he's obsessed with her blood, but like she's so mean to her the whole time, and the whole time she's just like trying to get closer to him, which is this whole like what do you think this whole thing is teaching us? Like, before they figure out like who Edward is, right? Like, what is this dynamic between them?
Well, as girls, I feel like we were always taught that boys that were mean to us at school actually secretly fancied us. And it's true. Like, I was bullied mainly by boys in my school. And then like years later down the line have found out, like, I slept with one of them like a few years after, because he was like, wow, I used to really fancy you at school. I left him in the middle of the night, which was quite a power move on my part. But
excellent.
But like it's a thing. Like, the guys treat you mean when they like you, and for some reason that's accepted, and it was very accepted in this film. And I think maybe because Bella is such a ordinary girl, and I think that's why she appeals, and this story has appealed to everyone, because every girl thinks that she is an ordinary girl. No girl out there is like, I'm the prettiest girl at school. Everyone loves me. I'm the most attractive. Bella really identifies with all women and our insecurities, and the fact that if the hottest guy at school started paying you attention, it would mean so much more to you than anything else, really.
Yeah,
because you really would be special. You would be chosen for once, you know?
I feel like the narrative is teaching us girls that you put up with shit that guys give you, and it will pay off in the end. It is like, if you keep getting those warning flags and you keep going, something isn't right. I feel like I'm not being treated right here. But don't worry, because the love will come later, and you'll have this amazing relationship. Except it still isn't. You know, it glorifies this idea of love, even though she is constantly surrounded by danger, like life-threatening danger. This is a fantasy that plays into what we want as submissive, pick-me women that go for the big, strong man that can protect us and look after us. That's not the narrative we want to be taught anymore. We want to be taught to be able to stand up for ourselves and put down our boundaries and have them respected, and to be strong, independent women that don't necessarily need a guy. But this film teaches you that you don't want to actually be strong and walk away from a bad situation. If you just stick with it through all of the gaslighting and all of the possessiveness and the weird fucking confusing behavior that Edward Cullen shows her, that yes, you'll fall in love in the end and it'll be great. And it's just so fucked.
She's in love with him because of the hot and cold nature of it, though.
Yes,
exactly. That's the drug. That is what draws
the fuckboy energy. This is the ultimate fuckboy.
Yeah,
he is literally just
the original, maybe. Honestly,
original fuck.
Like, for our generation, I kind of feel like that because he's such a dick to her throughout the entire first half of the movie, and then the second half, he's obsessed with her. He's following around, He, breaks into her house. He watches her sleep. He says, this is the second bucket now we have here. This whole "I can't live without you" dynamic, right? Like this is codependence kind of like masquerading as true love. And, I think it's just this really bizarre, funny thing. The thing that I'm realizing through all these movies as I'm doing this Rom Com Vom rewatch for all of these films is that like nobody knows anything about anyone. It's just immediately like it's about your looks, your attraction, and then you all of a sudden can't live without them. And I think you're obsessed with them. And it's just this problem where we as young women in particular assume that true love came just by at first sight. Like that was kind of the expectation. Magic, right? Like you're meant to be. Whereas, every real relationship requires work, and it's beautiful, and there's laughter, and there's people die. Like there are all of these things that happen in people's lives that they have to be there for each other to support. And of course, like none of that is at all even covered in the slightest in any of these rom-coms.
There is no laughter.
Zero laughter.
Zilch laughter from both of them.
Maybe the spider monkey part.
Yeah, the spider monkey.
Hold on, spider monkey.
What the hell? No one was laughing there. We were laughing as an audience, but they weren't laughing. Yeah, it was just a bit of a weird additive.
Black people love the band Paramore. We're all aware of it. It's like an accepted truth. But it made me wonder, what other seemingly random things do large groups of Black people love? So in an effort to help Black people feel more seen through community, I compiled a list of other things groups of Black people overwhelmingly like and started my podcast called Black People Love Paramore. Every episode, I talk about one thing that groups of Black people like that mainstream media doesn't necessarily associate with Black people, but we know we like. Episode topics so far include anime, astrology, Tony Hawk, Ariana Grande, Twitter, ginger ale, Cash App, and a whole lot more. If that sounds like you, check it out. It's called Black People Love Paramore, and you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hey, Sex Ed with DB listeners, DB here. And I need your help to make this podcast exactly what you want. We've put together a quick listener survey to find out what matters most to you, so we can cover the topics that you care about, find sponsors that match your interests, and create a podcast experience that's perfect for you. Plus, as a thank you, you could win a $100 gift card from Lion's Den. Your email is optional, so you can stay anonymous if you'd like. Just hit the link in the show notes and help us make Sex Ed with DB the best it can be for you. Okay, this is what's interesting is like after that scene, first of all, at some point after this, we must talk about the eroticism of the baseball scene because that's got to be a lot of people have watched that for porn for sure. Just exactly how it is because it's so like sexy and it's the family. I don't know. It's the whole thing going on. But when she's in the hospital bed and he's there, right? And he's the one that took her to the baseball game. He's the one that got her into trouble. He's the reason why she's in there. And she's like, you saved my life. Like I can't live without you. And you're like, no, ma'am, like he put you into this mess. Like, I don't understand.
The thing is, and he knows it and he tries to break it off and she's like,
no. Like she has a conniption. Not. Yeah, freaks out.
But I feel like it's even worse, he's not just a fuck boy, he's a soft boy because he's very much like, oh no, you shouldn't be with me and like I put you in this. But it's like, yeah, sure, saying that doesn't make you the good guy. You're still putting her in these physical situations. It doesn't matter how many times you say you shouldn't be a thing or this shouldn't happen, it's still happening and you're letting it happen.
Yeah, totally. I think like another interesting thing is that we see this in the beginning too. Like he's the one that keeps approaching her and saying, I don't think we should be friends. I don't think we should. She's like, okay, like, well, I don't know what to
Like,
tell you.
fuck
You
off
keep
then.
you keep coming up to me and saying we shouldn't be friends. Like, what is this bullshit?
Leave me
It doesn't
alone.
make any
Yeah.
sense. Leave me the hell alone. Oh, one other thing that I wanted to talk about is just how immediately Bella is treated as the new student. Like, random boys are kissing her, they're fighting over her. They just like, she's immediately the person who every single one wants to be with.
Yeah.
Like, can
Or,
we talk
like,
about that for
the
a
hate.
second? Yes.
She's immediately bullied by people that she hasn't even been interacting with. You know, she turns up in her truck, and then you've got like a gang of peeps that are just like,
Everyone's like,
oh, what? All of a sudden gonna bully you because of your truck. Like, that just doesn't really fucking happen. Just doesn't happen.
No, it's absurd. Yeah. And every boy is just like asking her to prom all of a sudden. Like, we have Anna Kendrick's character who's just like the desperate friend. I don't know. All the other girls in this film, other than Rosalie, which is kind of interesting. Another thing that I'm realizing in these rom-com rewatches is like, there's the meek girl and there's the power bitch who like doesn't take any shit. There's like absolutely nothing in between. And it's just so fascinating because Rosalie is just like breaking the salad bowl when she realizes that Bella's already eaten. Like, you're psychotic. Please take it easy. Like, why are you breaking the salad bowl?
That's an intense scene.
So extreme
as well.
And
Very intense.
I kind of liked that way of her meeting the family. That was quite enjoyable because it was just so outrageous and so outlandish. And this idea that I thought it was sweet. You know, they're going to cook for her, but also how awkward would that be? You go to a house and you're the only one eating a meal that they've cooked while they sit there and watch you and look at you like prey.
I would have I thought it was awkward that Edward says, "Oh, she's already eaten," because it put her in a really like tricky situation because she'd already said like, "Oh, thank you so much, like yum, tasty," and you know, she could have just had a little bit, you know, instead of wasting all of that effort.
But I will say, as much as I was sitting through this, going, this is ridiculous, I was turned the fuck on. It still set off my lights, my little teenage, like, oh my God, I want this. He's so like strong and scary. And he keeps, you know, being like, you know, are you scared of me? And she's like, no, I'm not scared of you. And I'm like, that's what I would say in this situation. But I want to be scared of you because that's like, you know, making my fucking fanny flutter as much as it was so
the
toxic.
kissing scene.
He's into it.
The kissing scene.
The kissing scene, I just remember as a teen being like, oh my, I mean, like, we haven't even talked about this yet, right? But like this writer is Mormon, and a lot of these like virginal, we talked about this before we started recording. We're all hilariously wearing white today. You can't see this, but like, we are clearly like, this is embedded in our heads of this idea of like pureness, restraint, virginity, saving yourself, eternity. There are all of these themes that are really, really deeply embedded in this writing of this movie and in the book. And so I think that like the kissing scene is so funny because it shows the ultimate ability to restrain yourself, to not go too far. And in every case, too far is to lose your virginity to somebody. And so I think the fact that they're 17-year-olds and it's this, which is so gross because he's 100 for once again, like there's this huge power dynamic. He's been 17 for 100 years. Why is he obsessed with this 17? Like, it's weird. It's so
like an
weird.
Actual
and
17-year-old. It makes no sense. He loves that, like, what's the phrase where a character is completely innocent? It's almost like reborn, rebirth. I'm so innocent and dumb and I don't know anything. And this gets shown throughout so many movies. You know, we've got like Lilu in Fifth Element. She's reborn and she's like, oh, I don't know anything. And it's like this male gaze fantasy. And that's the kissing scene where they kiss a lot and he literally throws himself to the other side of the room and he's like, no, I can't even, you know,
be around you.
Yeah, and it's just like, what the fuck?
It's
insane.
insane.
If a dude does that, run away because that is scary behavior. Like, if it's like him punching a wall and then she's like, don't leave. And he's like, okay, I'll sit and talk with you instead. Bro.
She is obsessed with him being obsessed with her. I think there's kind of like this duality here. we got to move on to our cringe corner,
Yes.
which is our most outrageous moment or line of the movie. And we're going to give out the Golden Sparkle Award to each moment here. So I'll go first, and then I'll let you guys think on it what your most awkward thing is. But this obviously is like because of the memes and the gifs that have come from this film. But like when she goes into the chemistry or like the bio lab, and
That's
her
the scene.
and her like hair is like picked up by the fan, and the way
my
he looks
Lord.
at her is just like, oh god, like it's as if he just smelled a porta potty. Like honestly, it is.
And
the
then she's like
cringiest
smelling
thing.
her armpits.
She's smelling
Like,
your armpits. It's just like
Me.
absolutely absurd. Like, when would you be looked at like that, as if someone just can't stand the way you smell? It's like the meanest thing that anyone could ever do. It's so cringy. His acting is absolutely horrific. And I just, that's my Golden Sparkle Award.
I mean, I feel like the best scene has to be the. Well, what am I? You're a
Vampire. Yes. I say that shit all the time. Say it out loud.
Say it out loud. I couldn't believe he was saying this. Like, say it
out loud.
And she's not even looking at him.
Like,
she's like turned away, just standing there.
Like,
in
why
the
is
middle
he
of a
screaming
fucking
at her?
forest. Yeah, say it. And
Oh
it's
my
like,
God.
And the camera's like circling them. It's
Out
so
loud.
dramatic.
You're impossibly fast and incredibly strong. Like just all naming all this shit. He's
it's like all the
screaming at her
equations
to
And
say
then
it
he's
out loud.
coming at her.
and then
Yes, the geometry.
But it's so hot, this scene, because he then pins her up against a tree and basically says, I'm a killer, Bella.
Yeah.
You're the, like, lamb.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
like, I would...
And so the lion fell. It was so out of whack when he was like,
No.
So the
So-
lion fell in love with the lamb.
This is my scene.
Right.
This is after that line where he says about, she's like, oh, the silly little lamb, and he's like, oh, the masochistic lion, and he ruins that line because he says masochistic lion, not sadistic. Masochistic is when you're into pain, and that cringed me out to the top end. I was like, you're trying to be hot and dominant, and you've just fucked up. Oh.
Guys, we have to rate this movie. Let me tell you the scale. The scale is the VOMS scale. So 1 to 5 VOMs. 1 VOM is that like it's a little dated, but like it's mostly great still. It still holds up. 5 VOMs, full body cringe, aged like milk. Really, like we should burn it. We should burn the DVDs that we have of this. How many VOMs? And Florence, you gotta let your biases maybe go. Just think about it objectively. How would you rate this?
But I love this film. Like,
So-
I love it. I literally went to Forks for the Twilight.
I understand. You're a diehard fan.
experience.
So maybe you would not rate it any VOM. Maybe it's 0 VOMs for you.
I know how fucked up it is. But like, I'm like, I just can't. I could never burn.
Could never burn the
Twilight.
DVD or the Blu-ray for that matter. Reed, we'll start with you. How many VOMs are you giving this?
I have to go for a 5 vommer. It is. I feel like it's teaching so many bad narratives that we have taken. This is proof that we have taken those narratives as teenagers, and it has fucked up the way that we think about relationships and sex, and how we can't stand up for ourselves when things are a little bit fucked, and putting down boundaries. This is like a total film to show you how to just let your boundaries be crossed and be okay with it.
You know what's really funny? I saw an Instagram reel, and it was someone flashback being like, I really want to be like Bella. I really want to be Bella, like when they were younger and a teenager and watching this. And then it was like flash forward to in their 30s, and it's just the November, December, like scene where she's just like depressed and the camera is going around her, and it's just like all the Twilight fans in their 30s just with the depressed Breaking Dawn scene.
Sad.
I'm
We
like,
can
quite
relate
sad.
to it.
Fucking
We relate
real.
to
I was
it.
like, wow, I relate so fucking hard.
Yeah.
And am I fucked up because of Twilight? Because I've not had a happy, successful relationship in all of my life. So Is it Twilight's fault? Who knows?
I'd like to think it is. I think that we here should just say it's Twilight's fault. And if we could, we're gonna do a quick like exercise where we just say anything that we would rewrite about this film, like a character, a plot point. If we could do it better, what would we do? And then we're gonna tease the next episode and say goodbye. So what do you think? What would we rewrite about this film?
I would not make Edward such a controlling, abusive narcissist. Like, I think that he needs to be like, I think just make him like into a decent guy who actually wants to communicate, and like, you know, if he actually was a guy that we could aspire to be with, then maybe we wouldn't all be so fucked up.
My rewrite would be the first time Bella meets Edward and she just goes, no.
She like
Fuck
flips
no.
him the bird and just goes and just gives him
Absolutely
a fuck
not.
you
And she
sound.
goes on to have a really happy life that's safe, that doesn't put herself or her friends and family in danger, and
maybe
just
no
lives a happily ever
paranormal
after
people. Yeah,
We love paranormal people.
We love paranormal people. I think that I would rewrite the ending where she kind of has already decided at the end of the first book that she wants to be a vampire. I think like it would be really great if we had one scene of her just kind of thinking about it rather than just
really thinking about it. Yeah.
Just put your noggin to the test for one moment, Bella, and see if that's really the right decision for
Pros
you.
and cons list, please. Just something.
I beg of you, get a whiteboard, get some friends, and just write it down. Okay, guys, we're going to tease the next episode before we say goodbye. This was so much fun. Set on Oahu in Hawaii, Playboy veterinarian sets his heart on romancing an art teacher, but she has short-term memory loss. She can't remember anything that happened the day before. So every morning he has to woo her again and again. Her friends and family are very protective, and he must convince them that he's in it for the love. If you guys know it, don't say it. Just think it, because I want people to guess it. DM us, Sex Ed with DB podcast. Tell us what you think it is. Yeah, and guys, Twilight, that's a wrap. Thank you guys so much for being here. This was very educational and fun. And I would have never, no offense, Florence, rewatched this on my own. So I'm so glad that I had this podcast to do it. I am so glad you guys are here. Thank you so much.